Opo, sir.
Anong nag-drive daw kayo? Ano binili?
Palit ka na ng bodyguard. Ikai-kai. Ikai ka, boss. Kahit kasi na tayo ng maning eh. Maning buhay pa naman. Maning buhay pa rin naman. Problema hindi na nababalit pa.
Dapat ba? Kasi ang aga ko. Kasi last year pa ako na.
O, sige. The session is now called to order. Everybody is requested to rise for the singing of the national anthem.
Bayang magiliw, pelas ng silanganan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, buyan ka ng magiting, sa manlulupit, di ka masisingil. Sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong baka, ay nilang ang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal. Ang kisap ng
Please remain standing for a minute of silent prayer and meditation. We'll now have the invocation to be led by the Honorable Arcelias.
Let us submit ourselves in the presence of our God Almighty. Dear Lord, we are gathered here today to honor you and praise your glory. Please accept our deepest gratitude for all the blessings you continue to bestow upon us in your mighty goodness and unconditional love. Even when oftentimes we are not worthy of your absolute love, you always keep us under your care and affection, and never fail to manifest your presence, especially when we need you most. We are here today, gathered as your faithful people, asking for your mercy and benedictions, begging for your kindness and understanding, and praying for your clemency and your love. Teach us to always be kind to each other, and know that although our emotions and actions differ at times, we have similar intentions, and that is to promote goodness and justice to all. As your children, we never cease to be faced with challenges, social, political, economic, and environmental challenges. We acknowledge that these challenges make us stronger and firmer in love and faith, but we need you always to be with us in order that we will not falter.
Approves the same.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we defer the approval of the journal of the previous sessions.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we now proceed with the reference of business and request that the Secretary General be directed to read the titles of bills and resolutions on first reading, as well as communications and committee reports.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The Secretary General is directed to read the titles of bills and resolutions on first reading, as well as the communications and committee reports for referral to the appropriate committees.
Reference of business, bills on first reading, House Bill 5514, declaring the Board of Trustees of the Veterans World War II as a public office and the funds entrusted to it as public funds, Representative Ako.
To the Committee on Veterans Affairs and Welfare.
House Bill 5515, institutionalizing the essential health care program for public school children, Representative Swansing Estrelita.
To the Committee on Health.
House Bill 5516, granting a franchise at the North Cotabato Multimedia Advertising Corporation, Representative Katamco.
To the Committee on Legislative Franchises.
House Bill 5517, declaring the month of November of every year as the National Malunggay Month, Representative De Venecia.
To the Committee on Health.
House Bill 5518, establishing the Edades and Bernal Museum in Dagupan City, Pangasinan, Representative De Venecia.
To the Committee on Basic Education and Culture.
House Bill 5519, declaring malunggay as the national vegetable of the Philippines, Representative De Venecia.
To the Committee on Revision of Laws.
House Bill 5520, prohibiting the imposition of the capital gains tax on the transfer of tax declaration, Representative Alvarez Pantaleon.
To the Committee on Ways and Means.
House Bill 5521, amending Republic Act 9184, Representative Pantaleon Alvarez.
To the Committee on Appropriations.
House Bill 5522, adjusting the amounts or the value of the property on which a penalty is based, Representative Chepeco.
To the Committee on Justice.
Resolutions. House Resolution 940, strongly urging the concerned transportation agencies to implement the plans, programs, and projects that will improve the connectivity and efficiency of the country's nautical highways, Representative Cesar Sarmiento.
To the Committee on Transportation.
House Resolution 941, directing the appropriate committees to inquire the underwater theme park project of Coral World Park Undersea Resorts, Representative Biason.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 942, expressing profound condolences of the House on the demise of His Excellency Alfonso T. Yuchenko, also known as Philippine Ambassador, Representative Olivares.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 943, conferring the Congressional Medal of Achievement to His Excellency Alfonso T. Yuchenko, Representative Olivares.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 944, expressing profound condolences of the House on the demise of Mr. Mariano K., founder of Mercury Drug Corporation, Representative Olivares.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 945, expressing profound condolences of the House on the demise of Mr. Roberto Eduardo Bobby Aboitis, President of the Ramon Aboitis Foundation Incorporated, Representative Olivares.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 946, urging the Committee on Metro Manila Development to inquire into the operations of online gaming firms, Representative Batocabe.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 947, urge the Committee on Housing, Urban Development, and other appropriate committees to direct the COA to conduct a comprehensive audit of the AFP-PNP housing program, Representative Alejano.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 948, calling on the House to investigate the alleged secret detention facility of the Manila Police District Station 11, Representative Harry Roque.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 949, strongly urging the concerned transportation agencies to address the safety risks and other issues brought about by advertisements along the MRT train line, Representative Cesar Sarmiento.
To the Committee on Transportation.
House Resolution 950, urging the Oversight Committee provided under RA 9745 or the Anti-Torture Act of 2009 to convene, Representative Rocamora.
To the Committee on Human Rights.
House Resolution 951, urging the Committee on Agriculture and Food and House Special Committee on Food Security to inquire into the possible existence of a rice shortage, Representative Manuel Luis.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 952, posthumously commending Second Lieutenant Estelito Saldua Jr., Representative Alejano.
To the Committee on National Defense and Security.
House Resolution 950, direct the Committee on Agrarian Reform to inquire into and determine the actual remaining hectareage of Dapicol, Representatives Casilaw, Sarate, and several others.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 954, direct the Committee on Agrarian Reform to inquire into possible misconduct and contempt by the PNP Region 11 Office, Representatives Casilaw, Sarate, and several others.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 955, direct the Committee on Human Rights and Agrarian Reform to investigate the March 22, 2017 abduction of Romel Tukay, Representatives Casilaw, Sarate, and several others.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 956, direct the Committee on Agriculture and Food to inquire into the status of the implementation of Republic Act 10816, Representative Garin Sharon.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 957, requesting the Committee on Higher and Technical Education to inquire the dire consequences of the CHED order to close the various Bukidnon State University External Study Centers, Representative Uy Juliet.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 958, there is a Committee on Games and Amusement and other appropriate committees to inquire into alleged irregularities in the operations of the small town lottery, Representative Pineda, Belmont, and several others.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 959, expressing profound condolences on the demise of Honorable Mark Jimenez, Representative Olivares.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 960, direct the Committee on Human Rights to investigate the secret detention cells allegedly maintained by the PNP, Representative Bagilat.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 961, calling for an investigation by the appropriate committee on converting existing coal-fired power plants into LPG power plants, Representative Suarez.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 962, honoring Mr. Roberto Eduardo Melendez Aboitiz, Representatives Delmar Durano, and several others.
To the Committee on Rules.
Messages from the Senate, message dated May 2, informing the House the Senate even date passed Senate Bill 1354.
To the Committee on Health.
Message dated May 2, informing the House the Senate even date passed Senate Bill 1355.
To the Committee on Small Business and Entrepreneurship Development.
Message dated May 2, informing the House the Senate even date passed Senate Bill 14.
To the Committee on Justice.
Committee reports, report numbers 199 to 206 and 212 to 218 on House Bill numbers 5551 to 5555, 1865, 2131, 2132, 5562 to 5566, 3404, and 3526.
To the Committee on Rules.
Report numbers 207 to 211 on House Bill numbers 5556 to 5559 and 4136.
To the Committee on Rules.
Report number 219, House Bill number 5568.
To the Committee on Rules. Majority Leader.
Till the privileged hour.
The Representative Anel UT, Deputy of Party List LPGMA, is now recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for my personal and collective privilege. This is about the abuses committed by some PNP personnel against our LPG sector. Mr. Speaker, in the last 6 months, there had been unauthorized police activity in the LPG sector. Police personnel, assisted by some retired and dismissed police personnel, had been conducting flag downs, operation and seizures, or forcible purchase of at unreasonable low prices of LPG cylinder in the retail market. Helpless drivers small business owners of LPG trucks and their helpers has been accosted, told to unload the LPG cylinders and transfer to the vehicle truck of this syndicate. And they are just paid only for a fraction of a retail price of LPG, if not confiscated outright. This is happening on the roadside, and not as what we should be confiscating it in the nearest precinct station. The Department of Energy is the government agencies authorized to implement laws and issuances with respect to LPG sector. And yet, nation is made with the DOE in these police operations. It continues to this day, and it remains unchecked. Abuses of these police officers will adversely affect the LPG sector. As representative of Liquefied Petroleum Gas Marketers Association, or LPGMA, I am calling for an investigation of this activity to deter commission thereof in the future. This illegal activity, the nature of their operations, and if found not in accordance with law, all their personnel who violate should be charged and to ease and desist from said illegal operations. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, dear colleagues.
Mr. Speaker, may I move that we acknowledge and recognize the guests of the Speaker, Honorable Pantaleon Alvarez, the Royal Norwegian Ambassador, His Excellency Eric Forner, and party.
The guests of the Speaker, Pantaleon Alvarez, please rise. Welcome to the House of Representatives. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we refer the speech of the Honorable Arnel T. to the Committee on Rules.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we recognize the Honorable Antonio L. Tino, Party List Act Teachers, to avail of the privilege hour.
The Honorable Representative Antonio L. Tino, Party List Act Teacher, is now recognized.
Maraming salamat po, Mr. Speaker. Magandang hapon po, kinatawan at mga panauhin sa kapulungang ito. Noong isang linggo, Mayo 1, ginunita ng libo-libong Pilipino ang araw ng paggawa sa pamamagitan ng malalaking kilos protesta. Sa Maynila, tinatayang 45,000 ang nagmarcha mula Welcome Rotonda patungong Liwasang Bonifacio hanggang sa Menjola. Dagdag dito ang libo-libo pang manggagawa, empleyado ng gobyerno, kabilang ang mga guro at kawani sa mga pampublikong paaralan, magsasaka at pisante, kababaihan, kabataan, at iba pang mga sektor na nagtipon-tipon sa iba't ibang sentro ng protesta sa iba pang panig ng bansa. Libo-libo po, Mr. Speaker, ngunit sa iisang tinig lamang, pinaugong nila sa buong kapuluan ang mga panawagan para sa sahod, trabaho at karapatan. At bilang isa sa mga lumahok sa kanila at kinatawan ng mga manggagawa sa sektor ng edukasyon, hayaan ninyo akong ulitin sa kapulungang ito ang isa sa pangunahin nilang mga panawagan, ang pagtaas ng sahod. Mariing demand ng mga manggagawa sa pribado at pampublikong sektor ang pagtaas ng sahod. Substansyal na pagtaas, hindi barya-barya, isang living wage na makaaagapay sa nagmamahalang mga bilihin at hindi living wage na hindi makatugon sa kanilang pang-araw-araw na pangangailangan. Mr. Speaker, malayong-malayo ang kasalukuyang minimum wage na naglalaro sa arawang 260 pesos hanggang sa 491 sa daily living wage na tinatansyang at least 1,019 pesos para sa isang pamilyang may 5 miyembro. Kaya naman nung Mayo 1, idiniin ng mamamayan ang panawagan para sa national minimum wage na 750 pesos kada araw para sa pribadong sektor at 16,000 pesos kada buwan para sa mga kawani sa gobyerno. Naniniwala ang kinatawang ito na napapanahon ng ipatupad ang isang national minimum wage dahil ito ang kailangan ng mga mamamayan, lalo na ang mayorya nating mga kababayan na naghihirap. Kaya panawagan namin kay Pangulong Duterte na gawing legislative priority ng kanyang administrasyon ang panukalang imandato ang national daily minimum wage na 750 pesos para sa mga manggagawa sa pribadong sektor. Kailangan din ng nakagyat na ipasa ng Kongresong ito ang mga panukalang rebisahin ang Salary Standardization Law upang itaas sa 16,000 pesos per month ang minimum na sweldo ng mga kawani sa gobyerno o salary grade 1 mula sa kasalukuyang 9,981 at partikular sa sektor edukasyon, itaas sa 25,000 ang minimum na sweldo ng mga pampublikong guro o salary grade 11 mula sa kasalukuyang 19,620 pesos. Mr. Speaker at mga kasamahan, nababahala kami na sa Philippine Development Plan 2017 to 2022 o ang Legislative and Policy and Legislative Blueprint ng pamahalaang Duterte, walang inilahad na plano para sa tama o disenteng pasahod at salary increase para sa manggagawa natin sa pribado at pampublikong sektor. Bilang mga kinatawan ng mga guro at kawani sa basic at tertiary education na sa pampublikong sektor ay bumubuo sa mayorya ng mga empleyado, ako at kapwa kinatawan ko mula sa ACT Teachers Party List na si Franz Castro ay matagal nang nananawagan para sa isang makabuluhang salary increase gaya ng nauna ko nang nabanggit. Gusto naming makita na si Pangulong Duterte ay may solidong commitment na itaas ang sahod ng mga manggagawa at empleyado sa pribado at sa pampublikong sektor. At kaugnay sa sweldo ng gawa at empleyado sa pampublikong sektor, lalong kailangan ang malinaw na commitment dito ni Pangulong Duterte dahil may pananaw ang kasalukuyang budget secretary niya, si Secretary Jokno, na masyado na umanong mataas ang sinusweldo ng mga government employees, lalo na yung nasa mababa hanggat panggitnang antas. Totoo, kabilang ang Salary Standardization Law Amendments sa LEDAC priorities ng kasalukuyang administrasyon. Pero kung pagbabatayan ang nahunang pahayag ni Kalihim Jokno dito sa Kongreso, ito ay nasa balangkas pa rin at walang pinag-iba sa salary standardization ng nakaraang administrasyon. Para sa amin, di ito nakasasapat bilang tugon sa panawagan ng ating mga guro at kawani. Dahil una, ito ang panukalang barya-baryang salary increase, tinatansyang dagdag na 500 pesos lamang para sa mga low and middle level employees, 500 pesos per month lamang para sa mga low and middle employees gaya ng mga guro, mga nurse sa gobyerno, at iba pa. Natingi-tingi pa mula 2016 hanggang 2019. Samantala, doble o abot sa triple pa nga ang increase para sa mga may mataas na posisyon sa gobyerno at mataas na opisyal. Isa pa, balak ng SSL na nasa balangkas nung nakaraang administrasyon ni na dating Pangulong Aquino at DBM Secretary Abad na ipatupad ang sistemang pasahod sa ilalim ng EO 201, Executive Order 201 Series of 2016 at EO 80 Series of 2012 na imbis na o sa halip na substantial na itaas ang sweldo, nagbibigay ng mga bonus at insentibo batay sa performance ng kawani. Ang sistemang pasahod na ito ay katulad sa wage policy sa pribadong sektor na sinimulan ng two-tiered wage system ng Department of Labor and Employment, kung saan mapapanatiling maliit ang sahod o mapapanatiling mababa ang sahod, ang minimum wage, dahil tinutulak ang antas ng minimum wage sa antas ng poverty level. At nagtutulak sa manggagawa na kamtin o higitan pa ang nakatakdang output bago bigyan ng bonus o insentibo. Sa ibang salita, pagtitipid sa labor cost ng kapitalista habang pinipiga ang lakas ng manggagawa. Ang mukha ng wage policy na ito, yung two-tiered wage system, ang equivalent nito sa pampublikong sektor, ay ang performance-based incentive system na ayon sa EO 201 ay binubuo ng Productivity Enhancement Incentive, PEI, at Enhanced Performance-Based Bonus. Ito raw ay in recognition of government personnel who play a greater role and carry heavier responsibility in attaining performance delivering results. Kakabit nito ang Strategic Performance Management System, SPMS, a mechanism that links employee performance with organizational performance to enhance the performance orientation of the compensation system. Kung tatanungin ng ating mga kawani, ang mga sistemang ito ay mga neoliberal na mekanismong mapanlinlang at mapanghati sa kanilang hanay. Mga pamamaraan ng higit na pagsasamantala sa mga kawani sa publikong sektor na hinango mula sa pamamaraan sa pribadong sektor. Magbibigay ng insentibo para kunwari ay tataas ang kikitain mo, pero duduguin ka muna sa pagtatrabaho para matapatan o mahigitan ng ahensya ang performance targets, na parang hindi pa labis ang pagtatrabaho mo sa bigat ng workload mo. Mas mataas na insentibo para sa mga mababangong performance statistics pagdating ng panahon ng assessment, kaya kompetisyon sa pagitan ng mga dibisyon o opisina sa halip na pagtutulungan at iisang kilos para sa serbisyo publiko. Lahat ng ito habang iniisnab ng gobyerno ang matagal ng panawagan para sa pagtaas ng sweldo. Tanungin ng public school teachers, sasabihin nila sa inyo na ang RPMS ay regulasyong pahirap kay ma'am at sir, hindi results-based performance management system na nagdagdag pa sa kanilang tambak ng clerical at administrative work bukod sa kanilang pagtuturo. Para sa kinatawang ito, dapat na ibasura ang mga mekanismo gaya ng two-tiered wage system sa pribadong sektor at panukalang Productivity Incentives Bill para din sa pribadong sektor at Performance-Based Incentive System, SPMS, RPMS at PBB sa pampublikong sektor. Pakinggan natin ang maliwanag na kahilingan ng mga mamamayan para sa nakabubuhay na sahod at para sa isang polisiyang periodikong mag-aangat sa kita ng mga Pilipino kasabay ng pagmahal ng presyo ng mga bilihin at batay sa pangangailangan ng kanilang mga pamilya. Ang mga panawagang ito ay tumutugma sa pinakahuling ulat ng Bayan Survey ng Pulse Asia na nagsasabing mga isyong pang-ekonomiko ang nais ng mga Pilipino na kagiyat na resolbahin ni Pangulong Duterte at ng kanyang administrasyon. Sa partikular, pagtaas ng sahod, ang nangungunang interes ng 43% ng mga Pilipino. Sinusundan ito ng panawagang kontrolin ng pamahalaan ng inflation, 41%, at ang paglikha ng mga trabaho, 39%. Naniniwala ang kinatawang ito na ang mga nangungunang interes sa ngayon ng mga Pilipino ay dapat siya ring nangungunang prioridad ng administrasyon ni Pangulong Duterte. Kaya sa kapulungan ito, nananawagan ako sa lahat ng mga kapwa ko mambabatas, ipatupad ang national minimum wage na 750 pesos kada araw, 16,000 peso minimum monthly salary para sa mga kawani ng gobyerno, 25,000 a month para sa Teacher 1. Maraming salamat po.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we refer the speech of the Honorable Tino to the Committee on Rules.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved.
At this juncture, Mr. Speaker, may I respectfully move that we acknowledge the guest of our Deputy Speaker, the Honorable Frederick Eric Abwig, the Honorable Congressman Gil Acosta, and Congressman Franz Alvarez of Palawan, the following: Honorable Board Member Winston Arzaga, Barangay Captain Angelita B. Dalma, Kagawad Arnel O. Dalma, Kagawad Rinaldo Y. Tipait, Kagawad Ricardo Al Rosales, Kagawad Bariri D. Dabantes, Kagawad Teresita M. Ibarra, Kagawad Ernesto G. Elebeto, Kagawad Los Minda D. Elebeto, kay Los Biminda, Province of Palawan. So move, Mr. Speaker.
The guests of the representatives of the 3 districts of the province of Palawan, welcome to the House of Representatives.
Mr. Speaker, I now move that the gentleman from the 3rd District, Negros Oriental, be the Honorable Arnolfo A. Teves Jr., be recognized to deliver his privileged speech. So move, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Representative Arnolfo A. Teves Jr. of the 3rd District of Negros Oriental is now recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon and good afternoon, everybody. I rise here again today to bring to attention the fact that in Region 7, meron pa rin kaming, tingin ko nakalimutan ng buong Pilipinas, yung drug testing sa LTO. But in Region 7, it is still being implemented. So I'd like to bring it to the attention of the nation, and I would like to ask, why is it still implemented in Region 7, and us in Negros Oriental, being already part of the Negros Island region or Region 18, all our constituents who seek to have a license or who deal with the LTO are still mandated or obliged to take the drug test. Ang rason nila sa akin, meron daw TRO dahil may kaso yung isang entity laban sa LTO at sabi daw ng korte, na dapat ipatuloy ang drug testing. Ang tanong ko, bakit usa ang taong bayan dahil sa kaso ng dalawang ito? What am I trying to drive at? What was the original intention of the drug testing? To be able to test if people use drugs or not. Now, ang tinigil na nga sa buong bayan dahil I think it's unconstitutional ang patuloy ang negosyo. Ayaw nilang matigil yung negosyo nila sa drug testing. Hindi ko alam kung kausap ng LTO or kumikita ba ang taga-LTO dito. Basta gusto ko malaman ng taong bayan at malaman ng ating Committee on Transportation na sa Region 7 meron pa ding drug testing. Hinihiling ko sana na mapatigil na ito kaagad at kung meron man silang kaso, wag na damayin ang taong bayan. That's all for now, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we refer the speech of the Honorable Arnolfo Teves to the Committee on Rules.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved.
Mr. Speaker, I now move that the gentleman from the party list, Magdalo, the Honorable Representative Garci C. Alejano, be recognized to avail the privileged hour.
The Representative Gary C. Alejano of the party list Magdalo is now recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just would like to correct that my first name is Gary po. Mr. Speaker, my esteemed colleagues and our countrymen, a pleasant day to everyone. I rise on a matter of personal and collective privilege concerning the recent incident of harassment of Filipino fishermen by the Chinese Navy in the West Philippine Sea. In an archipelagic country like the Philippines, fishing is one of the main sources of livelihood. Many of our coastal provinces have fishing communities that rely heavily on fish stocks and other marine life. Therefore, accessibility to fishing grounds is of high importance and must be ensured at all times. However, this is not the case in the West Philippine Sea, where some of our fishermen are still being restricted access from our very own waters. Since 2012, Chinese forces have been occupying the Scarborough Shoal and have established essentially a blockade in the area. The Scarborough Shoal, an area which is well within the 200-mile exclusive economic zone of the Philippines, is a prime fishing ground. The Chinese Coast Guard has maintained its presence around the shoal as well as in other waters in the West Philippine Sea, preventing Filipino fishermen from going near for fear of being harassed. In fact, there have already been a number of reported cases of Filipino fishermen harassed by the Chinese Coast Guard and Navy in the past. The most recent one before the Union Banks incident was last September when Chinese Coast Guard vessels prevented Filipino fishermen from fishing in the Scarborough Shoal. The fishermen pleaded to allow them to fish, but the Chinese Coast Guard continued to put pressure on them, causing them to live out of fear. If we may recall, last October, after his state visit in China, the President proudly announced that Filipino fishermen could go back and fish again in our waters in the West Philippine Sea. This seems to be after seeking permission from China to let our fishermen fish in the waters that are actually within our very own EEZ. Despite the assurance of the President, there had been incidents of Chinese harassment on Filipino fishermen still. On April 19, 2017, a television news program initially reported the alleged harassment of Filipino fishermen by the Chinese Coast Guard in the Union Banks. The Union Banks is a large atoll in the center of Spratlys Islands in the West Philippine Sea, located 180 nautical miles west of Palawan, which is within the Philippines EEZ. The news report immediately caught my attention because of the alarming incident. I then decided to meet with the fishermen involved. On April 22, I personally visited the Sisiman village in Mariveles, Bataan, to talk with the local fishermen involved in the reported incident. Allow me to relay the events that happened in Union Banks based on the testimonies of the fishermen. On March 27, Princess Johanna, a fishing boat with a crew of 25, left Mariveles to sail to Union Banks. They usually visit the Union Banks every year or when catch is scarce in their traditional fishing grounds. Among them is the Commodore Reef in Spratlys Islands. On April 5, they arrived in Union Banks. When they arrived, the fishermen noticed that there were already erected concrete structures which were not present last year. 30 minutes dropping anchor, a gray speedboat with a crew of 7 in camouflage uniform approached them and immediately fired shots into the air. Photographs of soldiers of the People's Liberation Army, Navy of China in uniform were presented to them. As they confirm it resembles the one that they encountered in Union Banks. This made the crew scampered and hid in the boat. They stayed on the opposite side of the boat from where the gray speedboat was. They remain at the opposite side from where the gray speedboat was whenever it moves around. The crew of the gray speedboat tried to speak with the fishermen, but it was in a language unfamiliar to them. Aside from the gray speedboat, the fishermen also noticed the presence of a gray ship nearby. The fishermen confirmed that indeed it was a gray ship after some photographs were shown to them by this representation. Instead of hauling in the fishermen immediately went back to Mariveles after that incident and decided to keep the issue to themselves, as they are clueless on what action to take and for fear of retaliation from the Chinese. The story only went public after a member of the Boat Owners Association in the village told the story to a local journalist. When the story finally reached the attention of the government, some personnel of the Philippine Coast Guard went to Mariveles to investigate and ask the fishermen about the incident. Members of the Philippine Coast Guard even chided the fishermen why they told the media first about the incident rather than to report it to them. The fishermen told them they do not know what to do. The Princess Johanna boat and some of its crew sailed out again to fish on April 19. However, 2 fishermen decided to stay behind because of the trauma they experienced in Union Banks. The fishermen shared that there were also other incidents in the past when some members of their association experienced harassment while fishing in Scarborough Shoal and First Thomas Shoal by the Chinese Coast Guard, using water cannon and firing warning shots in the air. Aside from the instances of harassment, the fishermen are also alarmed with the environmental impact of the activities conducted by the Chinese in the sea. Many of the coral reefs have already been destroyed due to sea activities made by the Chinese. The dialogue with the fishermen of Mariveles revealed that the harassment incident in the Union Banks was instigated by the Chinese Navy and not the Chinese Coast Guard as earlier reported. This revealing information makes the incident more unsettling than the previously thought. A white ship refers to the Coast Guard. Meanwhile, the gray ship as what the fishermen confirmed to have seen in Union Banks, refers to the Navy of any country. The function of a Coast Guard is more to enforce maritime law and conduct search and rescue, while the Navy is for war fighting. The presence and involvement of the Chinese Navy, a war-fighting force, in the recent aggressive action of China against our fishermen should raise huge concern. For one, the action of the Chinese Navy could trigger the Mutual Defense Treaty and may further escalate tensions in the West Philippine Sea area. Another equally important concern is the plight of our fishermen. Chinese forces continue to prevent them from fishing in the area, thereby affecting largely their livelihood. It is also our fishermen who are taking the brunt of Chinese presence in the area. The actions of the Chinese forces run counter to the Permanent Court of Arbitration decision, which held that Filipinos have the traditional fishing rights in the West Philippine Sea. However, as we all know, the President himself deliberately chose not to recognize the Permanent Court of Arbitration ruling, which could have been our card and leverage at the very least in ensuring that Filipino fishermen maintain access to their source of livelihood. Aside from its implication of the situation in the West Philippine Sea, the Union Banks incident also exposed the inadequacy of communication and reporting mechanism between the concerned government agencies and Filipino fishermen affected by the harassment of Chinese forces. The Mariveles fishermen raised that their only communication with the government agency is with the Pag-asa, which provides weather updates. They could not contact the Philippine Coast Guard since it only uses a short-distance radio communication. The fishermen even brag that they are much advanced than the Philippine Coast Guard, our own Coast Guard, because they have a marine band that can connect them internationally. Furthermore, when asked if there was any instance that they were met by local government agencies regarding the issue of competing claims in the West Philippine Sea, their answer is none. No one came to them to discuss their role in the issue and what to do in case they encounter any form of harassment from other claimant states. Considering that fisher folks are one of the main stakeholders in the issue. Now, let us see what we can learn from the Union Banks incident. Despite our supposedly renewed and warmer relationships with China, they are still waging aggressive actions in the West Philippine Sea. Regardless of the standing of the Philippine-China relations, China will continue its expansionism and assertion of control in the Southeast Asian and Pacific regions to achieve their strategic objectives. It is highly important that all stakeholders on the competing claims in the West Philippine Sea be introduced and educated regarding the issue. This in turn calls for a comprehensive and clear strategy in the West Philippine Sea issue which will guide the actions of all stakeholders, from national level agencies, local government units, and down to every fisherman that may be affected. The strategy should detail, including but not exclusive, how the livelihood of the affected fishermen will be supported and how their safety at sea will be ensured. We should give proper attention on modernizing our security forces, particularly the armed forces of the Philippines and the Philippine Coast Guard. During this critical period, as the country is ensnared in maritime disputes with neighboring countries, instruments of government for protection of our territory and its citizens should be strengthened. To my colleagues here in Congress, I call on this body to consider the gravity of the Union Banks incident. This recent case of harassment on our fishermen, instigated by the Chinese Navy, no less, should be condemned in strongest terms. A diplomatic protest should be filed accordingly against China for harassing Filipino fishermen within the EEZ of the Philippines. The House of Representatives, through its appropriate committee, should also conduct an inquiry on the incident in order to identify possible policy actions, especially on establishing a strategy that would guide the actions of stakeholders and would capacitate concerned government agencies. On my end, this representation has already communicated with concerned executive departments and local government units to call their attention and cooperation in addressing the issue at hand. I do hope that the same will be favored by this august body. Let us not forget the people on the ground facing the everyday consequences of policy decisions. More than the state leaders and officials, it is the people that most deserve the attention and fervent support. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we recognize the gentleman from Kabayan Party List, the Honorable Harry Roque, for his interpellation.
The Honorable Roque is recognized for his interpellation.
Mr. Speaker, may I know if the good gentleman from Magdalo Party List will yield to a few points of interpellation?
This representation is honored to receive questions from the party list Kabayan, Congressman Harry Roque.
Well, Mr. Chairman, before I proceed with my interpellation, I'd like to commend the good gentleman from Magdalo, because I think this is the first time that one of our colleagues had spoken up on this very important topic of fishing and the exercise of the country's sovereign rights over its exclusive economic zone. But in the course of his privileged speech this afternoon, the good gentleman from Magdalo discussed fishing in both Panatag Shoal as well as in the disputed Spratlys Islands. No? So my first question, of course, to the good gentleman, Mr. Speaker, is that if the good gentleman agrees that, in fact, although there are issues concerning fishing and sovereign rights in both Panatag, otherwise known as Scarborough, and in the Spratlys, that the nature of and extent of our fishing rights in these two distinct geographical areas are separate and distinct. Will the good gentleman agree with this conclusion?
Mr. Speaker, as far as I understand it, in the ruling of the PCA that was given in favor of the Philippines, The Hague has provided that the Philippines has exclusive rights over our exclusive economic zone. That's as far as I understand it, Mr. Speaker.
Well, Mr. Speaker, perhaps let me elucidate a bit on the decision of the UN Tribunal on the Law of the Sea on our arbitration with China. What the good gentleman from Magdalo stated earlier, in fact, is the rule that is recognized in the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, and that is in the exclusive economic zone, coastal states have sovereign rights, which includes the right to explore and exploit the natural resources thereat, including fishing. But the ruling of the tribunal is insofar as Scarborough Shoal is concerned, that it is traditional fishing grounds not just of Filipino fishermen, but of Chinese and Vietnamese fishermen as well. And that is why earlier I asked the gentleman from Magdalo to confirm that the nature of the fishing rights of the Philippines in Scarborough differs from the Spratlys, because according to that arbitral tribunal, we cannot claim exclusive fishing rights in Scarborough, since it was recognized as traditional fishing rights, not only of Filipino fishermen, but of Chinese and Vietnamese fishermen as well. And therefore, the distinction between these two areas is that Spratlys being contested, it is our position that we have exclusive fishing rights in our EEZ in the Spratlys, whereas we cannot assert this exclusivity in the Scarborough precisely because the UN Tribunal for the Law of the Sea had already ruled that it is covered by traditional fishing rights. No?
Thank you for that information, Mr. Speaker. But nonetheless, that considering that that area is a traditional fishing ground for the claimant states like Vietnam, China, and the Philippines, we should have free access to those areas without being physically harassed by, especially by the Chinese Coast Guard and the Chinese Navy. That's what I'm concerned about, because before the issue went out in the open and became internationalized, before fishermen from these countries freely fish in these areas without harassment from anybody else, especially from China.
The gentleman, Mr. Speaker, is correct in that the tribunal, after it had ruled that it is traditional fishing rights of the Philippines, China, and Vietnam, the tribunal ruled that it was unlawful, therefore, for China to have excluded our fishermen from fishing in Scarborough. But my point, Mr. Speaker, is despite the ruling that it was unlawful for China to exclude us, nonetheless, as far as the Scarborough Shoal is concerned, we cannot claim to have exclusive right to fish in the area because it is a right that we share with China and Vietnam, so much so that neither China, Vietnam, nor the Philippines can exclude any of the fishermen from fishing in the Scarborough Shoal. Is this not an accurate restatement of the ruling of the UNCLOS Tribunal, Mr. Speaker?
Yes, thank you for that information, Mr. Speaker. It is specifically stated in the lawfulness of China's action regarding traditional fishing rights. And the gentleman from Kabayan is correct that that China had interfered with these rights in restricting access to our fishermen, and that our country should assert that our fishermen should be given free access to the area. Not only given free access to the area, but our government must have a course of action in order to support our fishermen going to those areas.
And that therefore, because of the different nature of the controversy that we have in the Scarborough, we have actually pending in this chamber a resolution authored by this representation asking already the executive to convene a special committee that could negotiate with both China and Vietnam on the issue of joint fishing in the Scarborough. Because after all, even China and Vietnam, adversaries as they are because of the Spratlys, have successfully concluded a joint fishing and a joint maritime patrol agreement, no? Despite their unresolved controversy over the Spratlys. Now, may I know if the good gentleman from Magdalo supports this initiative to already formalize and implement the ruling of the UNCLOS Tribunal to implement the regime of joint fishing in the Scarborough Shoal as well. At least, I should say.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I support that initiative. Actually, we are hopeful of the proposed code of conduct that will be accordingly completed within the year, something that is enforceable or workable within the claimant states in order to lessen the instability in South China Sea. So I agree with the proposal of the gentleman from Kabayan. But I just would like to inform the body that right now, some of the fishermen from Zambales and Pangasinan are fishing in Scarborough, but the number of activities have reduced because they cannot even go inside the lagoon of the Scarborough Shoal, considering the fact that that area is very harsh. The weather condition in that area is very harsh, and their only opportunity to seek refuge is within the shoal. However, there's a Chinese Coast Guard guarding the mouth of that shoal, and that our fishermen has to go back to mainland Philippines in order to seek shelter from any bad weather coming to that area.
Mr. Speaker, in fact, I confirm that I have received the same information that although our fishermen have since been allowed to fish in the area of Scarborough, that the Chinese have not allowed, in fairness, any fishermen to enter the lagoon. That includes Chinese fishermen, which I think is a violation also of the ruling of the arbitral tribunal, because the tribunal, when it ruled that Scarborough was a traditional fishing ground, did not distinguish between the lagoon within Scarborough and the waters outside of the lagoon. But my question is, as far as Pratlys is concerned, it being contested between at least 5 claimant countries, will the gentleman agree that the issue of fishing is far more difficult to resolve, as in fact, the issue of fishing inevitably is intertwined with the issue on conflicting claims to islands which generate this maritime territory in the first place? Will the gentleman from Magdalo agree with this conclusion?
Yes, I agree, Mr. Speaker, considering the fact that the presence of the claimant states in the area is not only for the issue of sovereignty on those areas, but also the protection of their own fishermen and the exploitation of that area for the benefit of their own citizens. In that, I agree that coming to an agreement for fishing rights in those areas will unnecessarily drag the issue of sovereignty in that area.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I do not know if the gentleman from Magdalo knows about this fact, but we do not have to go far from this August Chamber of Congress, no? to realize that China's conduct in compelling us to restrain from the exercise of our sovereignty has reached this very hall of Congress. If the gentleman from Magdalo is not cognizant of this fact, the Committee on Government, Enterprises, and Reorganization, and I believe Mr. Speaker is a member of that body, no, was scheduled to conduct a formal committee hearing in the island of Kalayaan, which is in the disputed Spratlys area. We made it as far as Puerto Princesa, but were unfortunately prevented from going to the island because of confluence of events, including weather conditions and the threat from China that we should not proceed with the investigation. Does the gentleman know about this fact?
I am not aware of the specifics of that fact, Mr. Speaker, but I've heard about that contingents from Congress planned to visit Pag-asa Island but were prevented due to bad weather, as I've heard it from the news, to proceed to Pag-asa in order to visit our troops there, Mr. Speaker.
So may I know from the good gentleman from Magdalo if he agrees with my observation that it is very important as a matter of asserting Philippine sovereignty over Kalayaan that this chamber, this August Chamber of Congress should proceed with its planned public hearing on the proposed creation of the West Philippine Sea Development Authority to be held in the island of Kalayaan itself, despite protestations from China and despite warnings from the Department of National Defense.
Yes, I agree, Mr. Speaker. In fact, in the last Congress, I requested the Department of National Defense and the Department of Foreign Affairs for members of Congress to visit our troops in the Kalayaan in order to show support to our troops and to assert our claims there and to give morale to our troops and to show the international community that we are determined in asserting our rights in West Philippine Sea. However, with the same reason given to Congressman Roque, there are other reasons that why we could not proceed to Pag-asa Island. But But I guess, Mr. Speaker, it is high time that our country should show to the world that we are serious in our claims in West Philippine Sea. And Pag-asa is part of the occupied islands of the Philippines. We're not going to any other islands that are occupied by any countries. Pag-asa is part of our territory as per Republic Act 9522. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, and my last question to the gentleman from Magdalo is if he will agree with my assertion that even under threat from China, that they will shoot down the plane carrying the congressman intending to hold a public hearing in the province, in the island of Calayan, that we should nonetheless persist as an act of patriotism in order to assert Philippine sovereignty in the disputed Spratlys group of islands.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. In fact, those actions are non-military, as claimed by some of our brother Filipinos, that we should not make any statements, we should not make any action that will provoke China, because we cannot afford to go to war with China. I must emphasize that options are available in asserting our rights over West Philippine Sea without even resorting to war. In fact, increasing our civilian activities over those areas would strengthen our claims, like research, like tourism activities, like fishing activities. Those activities, increase in number, would show that we are really determined in asserting our rights in West Philippine Sea.
I am of the same conclusion, Mr. Speaker, as a gentleman from Magdalo, that a public hearing of Congress in Kalayaan will bolster our claim to the Spratlys, because that is a very strong evidence of the exercise of legislative jurisdiction, a public hearing conducted in what is truly and uncontroverted to be Philippine territory. Now, our good chairman from the Committee on Government, Enterprise and Organization informed me that our next meeting is on May 17, but may I know from the gentleman from Magdalo, if we have the opportunity to conduct the hearing or a public hearing on the bill in Kalayaan, can we look forward to the pleasure of his company on this visit?
It would be my honor, Mr. Speaker, to go to Spratlys, especially Pag-asa, in order to visit our troops there, in order to show to them that Congress as an institution is behind our troops there, because those areas are isolated and they are being replaced once every 4 to 6 months, and with our presence there, definitely it will boost their morale. And I'd like to thank the gentleman from Kabayan for considering my support in that very noble initiative.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I have no further questions for the gentleman from Alejano, and I would like to reiterate my commendation to him for discussing this very important issue that involves not just national security, but national sovereignty, territory, and patrimony as well. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for that support from Congressman Harry Roque.
Mr. Speaker, there being no other member who wishes to interpolate the Honorable Gary C. Alejano, I move that we refer the speech of the Honorable Alejano to the Committee on Rules.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
So move, Mr. Speaker.
There's a motion to refer the speech in the interpellation to the appropriate committee. Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved.
Mr. Speaker, I now move that the lady from party list Kabataan, the Honorable Representative Sarah Jane Ilago, be recognized to avail of the privileged hour.
The Honorable Representative Sarah Jane Ilago of the party list Kabataan is now recognized.
Mr. Speaker, my dear colleagues, good afternoon. In December last year, the Filipino youth celebrated and embraced the mighty development of including an 8.3 billion appropriation in the 2017 national budget to cover for the tuition fees of over 1.4 million students of 114 SUCs in the country. This potentially makes the Philippines at par with some of the great nations of the world, including Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Germany, when it comes to providing for free tuition in state schools. Mr. Speaker, with this, the Philippine Congress has set in the reversal of the long-standing state policy of leaving public college to the grasp of commercialization. This simple, yet game-changing move has shattered the illusion cast by naysayers and conservatives who have long sought division and spread cowardice by saying that this is not possible. Mr. Speaker, we must note, however, that the move to introduce free tuition is no gift. This development did not spring from just the benevolence of our colleagues in Congress, especially in the Senate. In fact, this is a victory for the student and youth movement, which has long fought for the right to education. This is a recognition of the long-standing clamor of the Philippine student movement for the government to veer away for letting schools to charge and profit from public higher education. Mr. Speaker, it all seemed too good to be true. But when the budget was signed, the President has egged a dangerous caveat that it shall be implemented conditionally to benefit the poor but deserving. It took the CHED and DBM almost 6 months to put their brains together to think of an ingenious way of following the President's order while upholding the facade that they are for free education. And it doesn't need a genius, however, to uncover their lies. The IRR, or the implementing guidelines of the free tuition policy, promised free tuition for all those who are under the 4Ps program and for those who are recipient of Student Financial Assistance Programs, or STUFAPs. The remaining students eligible will be ranked accordingly to their capita household income, similar in essence to UP Socialized Tuition System, or STS. For non-STUFAP beneficiaries, sadly, the CHED and DBM didn't provide any other option aside from hoping for extra slots, or if their income is low, enough for them to be considered poor. Despite this, CHED admits that not all enrollees for the next academic year will receive free tuition. The IRR of the free tuition policy just operationalized its prioritization to the poor but academically able by adopting the Listahanan 2.0 database management system used under the 4Ps program to discriminate the poor. It uses a much-taunted proxy means test that assigns weights to certain factors related to welfare, much to the tune of more SEC being employed by UP's socialized tuition system. The PMT is a metric pushed by the World Bank to determine beneficiaries of social protection programs under its wing. By subjecting the FTP, or the free tuition policy, to 4Ps, it will only serve to justify this flawed poverty alleviation measure and further absolve the government from resolving the roots of poverty. In this case, the lack of education of its citizens. Now, 4Ps, without the context support of national industrialization, rural development, among others, will just breed discontent among the people. It will only paint the illusion that people get by while failing to breach the chains of social inequality. Just like 4Ps, FTP will surely earn criticism for attempting to target the poor instead of utilizing its funds to provide access to all enrollees of 114 SUCs, as what students previously demanded. CHED and DBM intends for students to compete for their FTP slots and other merit-based programs under STUFAPs to just access higher education in SUCs. The FTP clearly wants to subject SUC students to socialized tuition learning from the experience of UP by subjecting students to a competition of poorest of the poor to prove their worthiness. This has resulted to the edging out of the poor by those coming from the upper or middle class who has relatively capacity to comply with various requirements imposed by their respective SUCs. This has grossly resulted to UP's collection of no less than 11 billion pesos from tuition and other school fees from students. According to CHED's own estimates, at least 1 million students are expected to enroll for academic year 2017-2018. And the FTP can only shoulder 85% of this number, with a computation of about 9,345 pesos for tuition for 40 units in the next academic year. The remaining 15% who are not qualified will probably pay for the full cost of their education. Worse, the FTP only covers tuition and risks bloated collection of other school fees. For 2017, DBM estimates total OSF's collection to 4.47 billion. And this figure might go up as we expect SUCs to offset profit losses that will be incurred from the implementation of the policy. And there are other red flags. This has implications in special cases, such as in Cagayan State University, which is the only SUC with zero tuition. And in UP, which reaches tuition in excess of 15,000 per semester, as well as a small number of scholarship beneficiaries. With the FTP, or the free tuition policy, setting the ground for institutionalized reliance on prioritization schemes, instead of providing for universal access to education, this poses added danger as it will set the pretext for our future legislative efforts. In the guise of social justice and prioritizing the poor, the IRR has fine-tuned free tuition to be consistent with the current neoliberal policies. Thus, we call on all our colleagues, students, youth, and the general public to solidly follow through on this initial victory, to continue our fight for free education, and demand no tuition collection for the next school year, 2017-2018. Ang sigaw ng mga iskolar ng bayan, ang sigaw ng kabataan, walang koleksyon, libreng edukasyon, dapat nang maipatupad. Maraming salamat, Ginoong Speaker. At nananawagan din tayo sa darating po na Mayo Agis sa buong bansa, magkakaroon ng pambansang araw ng pagkilos ang ating mga iskolar ng bayan at kabataan upang muli manawagan walang koleksyon, libreng edukasyon.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we refer the speech of the Honorable Sarah Jane Ilago to the Committee on Rules.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved.
Mr. Speaker, we have some guests from the local government unit of Batangas City. The guest of the Honorable Harry Roque. They are the following. I move that we recognize the following: Vice Mayor Doc June Berberabe, Christopher Gambol, Dante Valenzuela, Jeff Berberabe, Michael Cascalia, Gloria Lagdameo, and Jojo Mercado. So move, Mr. Speaker.
The guests of the Honorable Harry Roque, welcome to the House of Representatives.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we approve the Journal number 84 dated May 2, 2017, and Journal number 85 dated May 3, 2017. So move, Mr. Speaker.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. Journal number 84 of May 2, 2017 and Journal number 85 of May 3, 2017 is hereby approved.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we call the roll of members. So move, Mr. Speaker.
Secretary General is directed to call the roll of members.
Roll call of members, honorable representatives. Abad, Abaya, Abayon, Abellanosa, Abu, Abueg, Acharon, Acop, Acosta, Acosta Alba, Adjong, Advincula, Agaraw, Agabaw, Aglipay Villar, Albano, Alcala, Alejano, Almario, Almonte, Alonte, Alvarez, France, Alvarez Mercedes, Alvarez Pantaleon, Amante, Amatong, Andaya, Angara Castillo, Antonino, Antonio, Aragones, Arbizon, Arcillas, Arenas, Atienza, Aumentado, Bagaw, Bagaching, Bagilat, Banal, Barbers, Barsaga, Batawil, Batucabe, Bautista Bandigan, Bilaro, Belmonte Feliciano, Belmonte Jose Christopher, Belmonte Ricardo, Benitez, Bernos, Bertiz, Biason, Billones, Biron, Bulilia, Bondok, Bordado, Bravo Anthony, Bravo Maravida, Brosas, Bulot Bigtang, Cagas, Calderon, Calixto Rubiano, Caminero, Campos, Canama, Cari, Silaw, Castelo, Castro France, Castro Fredenil, Catamco, Cayetano, Celeste, Seráfica, Cerillas, Chávez, Chupeco, Coanco, Coliantes, Cortés, Cortuna, Cosalan, Crisólogo, Cuba, Cuaresma, Cueva, Dalipe, Dalog, Daza, De Jesus, De Venecia, De Vera, Defensor, Del Mar, Del Rosario, Del Oso Montalia, Dimaporo Abdullah, Dimaporo Khalid, Duabit, Durano, D, Elago, Enverga, Erice, Erigel, Ermita Buhain, Escudero, Espina, Espino, Estrella, Eusebio, Evardone, Fariñas, Fernando, Ferrer Juliet, Ferrer Luis, Ferriol, Floirendo, Flores, Fortuno, Ventebella, Garbin, Garcia Gwendolyn, Garcia Jose, Garcia Albano, Garin Richard, Garin Sharon, Gasataya, Gatchalian, Heron, Guana Cristina, Gomark, Gomez, Gonzaga, Gonzales Alexandria, Gonzales Aurelio Dong, Gonzales Fernando, Goriseta, Gulias, Hernandez, Herrera D, Hopper, Malusos, Javier, Ko, Konghun, Labad-Labad, Lacson, Lagman, Lanete, Laugan, Lasatin, Liachon, Lee, Lim Kay Chong, Lobrigat, Lopez Benur, Lopez Carlo, Lopez Manuel, Loyola, Macapagal Arroyo, Maceda, Madrona, Malapitan, Manalo, Mangawang, Mangudadatu, Suharto, Mangudadatu Sajid, Marcoleta, Marcos, Marino, Marquez, Martinez, Matugas, Miliana, Mending, Mendoza, Mercado, Mirasol, Montoro, Nava, Nieto, Noel, Nograles Jericho, Nograles Carlo, Nolasco, Nunez Maleñaon, Waminal, Ocampo, Olivares, Ong Edwin, Ong Henry, Ortega Pablo, Ortega Vini, Pacquiao, Paduano, Palma, Pancho, Panganiban, Panotes, Papandayan, Pichay, Pimentel, Pineda, Plaza, Primicia Sagabas, Kimbo, Radasa, Ramirez Sato, Ramos, Relampagos, Revilla, Rowapuno, Robes, Rocamora, Rodriguez Isidro, Rodriguez Maximo, Roman, Romero, Romualdez, Romualdo, Roque Hari, Roque Rogelio, Sakdalan, Sagarbaria, Sahali, Salceda, Salimbangon, Salo, Salon, Sambar, Sandoval, Santos Recto, Sarmiento Cesar, Sarmiento Edgar, Saviliano, Sema, Xiao, Singson, Silverio, Swansing Estrelita, Swansing Horacio, Suarez, Si Alvarado, Tambunting, Tan Angelina, Tan Milagrosa, Tan Shirney, Tejada, Teves, Chanco, Ting, Tino, Tolentino, Treñas, Tugna, Tupas, Turabi Nataman, T, Umali, Unabia, Ungab, Unico, Uy Juliet, Uy Rolando, Uy Barreta, Vargas, Vargas Alfonso, Vilarde, Velasco, Velasco Catera, Veloso, Vergara, Villapuerte, Villanueva, Villarasa Suarez, Villarica, Villarin, Vilago, Yap Artur, Yap Melesio, Yap Victor, Yu, Zamora Mar Carmen, Zamora Ronaldo, Zarate, Subiri. Mr. Speaker, the roll call shows that 229 members responded to the call.
With 229 members responding to the call, the chair declares the presence of a quorum. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move for election to the Commission on Appointments the Honorable Halos Hos, Seth Frederick P., Vice Albano Rodolfo III T. Albano Rodolfo T. III, Vice Florendo Antonio Jr. R. So moved, Mr. Speaker.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we adjourn until tomorrow, May 9, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So moved, Mr. Speaker.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. We adjourn until May 9, tomorrow, Tuesday, 2017, 4 p.m.